12th International Conference of Chief Justices of the World on Article 51 of the Constitution of India, the World Judiciary Summit, is currently on at the World Unity Convention Centre, City Montessori School Girls Degree College, Kanpur Road. The day began with the school prayer.
And to worship thee, I testify at this moment to my godlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy will.
Students of CMS, on behalf of world's over 2 billion children, appealed to the august gathering of legal luminaries referring to the landmark cases in Israel of compensation for the future lost income and computation of lost future earnings of a child injured or killed.
Consider a court trying to understand the future earnings of a pre-teenage child injured or killed in an accident, and how the court's decision will affect the child's family. Such a task is both daunting and full of empathy at the same time.
Children also appealed for enforcement of international laws and treaties.
On behalf of children taken by the United Nations was UNICEF's creation in December 1946. However, it took until the 1990s for all the pieces to come together in the form of Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted by UN General Assembly in 1990.
Our appeal to you is thus to ask your lordships to please rule in conformity with international laws and treaties.
In another case, referring to a case in point from India, children appealed for the importance of public interest litigation, or PIL, as a right to exert for removal of some public grievances and benefit through it.
A PIL can be filed in any Indian High Court or directly in the Supreme Court of India. PIL is a right given to the socially conscious member or a public-spirited NGO to espouse a public cause by seeking judicial redressal of public injury. Such an injury may arise from breach of public duty or due to a violation of some provision of the Constitution. In the 1980s, the Supreme Court decided to reach out to the people seeking legal remedies in cases where public interest is at stake.
Honorable judges, I appeal to you that such a litigation system be made prevalent in your country too. If such public interest litigations, especially PILs related to children and even by children, are accepted in your respective courts, then it will be a huge boon for the public.
The chief guest for the plenary session, Mr. Justice Hilario David Jr., former Chief Justice of Philippines, spoke on ecological crisis called climate change, the doctrine of intergenerational responsibility in respect to the rights of the people for balanced and helpful ecology.
She has been and continues to be abused, manipulated and plundered and defied by man. I refer, of course, to the ecological crisis called climate change. In that paper, I mentioned of a landmark decision of the Supreme Court of 1993 of the Philippines, which I wrote for the court, enunciating the doctrine of intergenerational responsibility in respect to the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature, which the Constitution of the Philippines guarantees and which the government must protect and advance.
Mr. Varba Tomashe, Chairman Board of Director Forum 2000 Foundation, Czech Republic, read out the message of His Excellency Mr. Václav Havel, former President of Czech Republic.
Dear friends, in 1996 my friends Elie Wiesel, Johei Sasakawa and I decided, as the end of the millennium was coming near, to convene various interesting international figures, Nobel Prize winners, writers, ecologists, philosophers, spiritual leaders, and former leading politicians. Quite simply, people who are linked by their experience with the burden of responsibility. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the world we live in and our hopes and expectations, but also the threats in the upcoming new millennium.
The convener of International Chief Justices Conference, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, spoke on one economic order and one political order, an appeal that was made by the general consensus of the nations at the beginning of the century.
It is the general consensus, that means the majority of the nations wanted two things. Number one political order of this world. And number two, they want one economic order of the world. Some of the nations, in general consensus also, I can understand that some of the nations must have not agreed. But this was the general consensus. But this clause was deleted at the behest of a powerful veto power, America, and this could not be discussed in the Millennium Summit, the first Millennium Summit of the world leaders, which was held from 6 to 8 September 2000. This clause was again added in the Millennium Forum meeting, which was held in United Nations General Assembly Hall from 22nd to 26th of May 2000. Again, this clause, which was passed by the NGOs and civil society organizations, that there is a need for a one economic order and one political order of the world, was deleted by the same veto power, America, on the 8th of August 2000. That is the whole question. Now, how to proceed? Nations want it. I also tell you, there are many, many people who have said that there is a need for a world government, world law.
Honorable Ms. Justice Vesnalik Prelic, judge from Serbia, spoke on industrial progress should not be an excuse in destroying ecology. Safe ecology is not just a smaller goal, but a larger task.
Will we continue using industrial progress as an excuse for destroying the very planet we live on? It is high time for mankind to stop deluding itself that it is stronger than the laws of nature. If not for its own sake, then for the sake of its children and its children's children. All these are reasons for enlisting the engagement of anthropologists, psychologists, and many other experts, not just politicians, economic, war, or other analysts, in addressing the current situation in the world. The struggle for a happy and safe future of our children cannot be just our common goal, but our common task as well.
Honorable Mr. Justice D.P. Singh, Judge, Allahabad High Court, India, in his address spoke on dignified life protected by fundamental right of life, further elaborating on children's right.
Facets of dignified life are protected by a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution, as interpreted by Supreme Court from time to time. Hence, at least in India, the higher judiciary have got ample power to issue appropriate order or direction to the government to ensure the child's welfare subject to financial viability. But judiciary requires a backup of documentation of ground realities faced by children and common citizens. This should be done by the colleges having research-oriented program or by social organization. Judiciary cannot work on its own unless having some social and moral support is accorded to discharge its obligation. Children must be given a reasonable opportunity to grow up to their capacity to become a good citizen.
Honorable Mr. Justice Zaila Mekhala OJ, Chief Justice, Supreme Court of Jamaica, felt that the cause of enforceable international law is just time to act now. Advancement and upliftment of children is the need of the hour.
Rules governing the rights, protection, treatment, and care of children. We are also aware of the various conventions, protocols, guidelines, initiatives, and through the instrumentality of UNICEF in seeking to promote ideals for the care and protection of the children of the world. One such, of course, is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Convention, which has promulgated a conceptual and legislative framework. Such efforts have been augmented by the input of non-government organizations and state agencies within national boundaries, all geared towards protection of the rights, freedom, and dignity of the world's children.
Honorable Mr. Justice Igor Spiroski, Judge, Constitutional Court, Republic of Macedonia, in his speech said, family is the basic unit of a society and society should create healthy conditions for it so that children grow up in positive and happy environment.
To life, which may not be restricted by anyone with any norms and acts. Family is the basic cell of society and natural environment for the development and well-being of all its members, in particular of children. Therefore, what should be created necessarily are conditions for the formation of a healthy family, which will be provided with the protection and aid required so that the children of that family, after becoming of age, may fully integrate into the system and take over full responsibility for the community.
Honorable Mr. Justice A.K. Srivastav, former Judge, Allahabad and Delhi High Courts, India, spoke on evolution of humanity from fields to industries to offices. And in this process, we have begun to leave a lot of carbon footprint. Time has come to put a check on this.
Now, what is environment? You know it, that environment is life to you. You need pure water, pure air, no noise, etc., etc. This is one of the foremost right to life. But what is happening? In the spree of development, we have been encroaching upon the environment. Now we have reached a stage where we have to keep a balance between environment and development. We cannot do away with the environment, and at the same time we cannot do away with development.
Honorable Ms. Justice Sylvia O. Hinz-Radix, Administrative Judge for Civil Matters, 2nd Judicial District, New York State Supreme Court, USA, spoke on rights of children and women, gender equality.
Initially, it is important to acknowledge that in many regions around the globe, enormous strides have been made in the area of gender equality and the roles that women play in society. It is shocking to think that less than 100 years ago, women were prohibited from voting in many self-professed free nations, including my own. Even within my own lifetime, the very idea of a woman serving in the capacity of a judge was unthinkable in many jurisdictions, and the career opportunities available to women were largely restricted to handfuls of fields such as nursing, teaching, or secretarial work.
नारी हो तुम अरी न रह सके पास तुम्हारे, ना प्लस अरी ना माने नहीं, अरी माने दुश्मन. स्त्री वो होती है जिसका कि कोई देयर इज नो एनिमी टू ए लेडी. नारी हो तुम अरी न रह सके पास तुम्हारे, धैर्य दया ममता बल है विश्वास तुम्हारे. A lady has been given 4 qualities more in addition to the qualities given to men. These are love, compassion, patience, and sacrifice and insight. So, धैर्य दया ममता बल है विश्वास तुम्हारे. कभी अहिल्या, कभी उत्तरा जीजाबाई, कभी जानकी, कभी लक्ष्मी, पन्ना धाई, अपने बलिदानों से युग इतिहास लिखा रे. नारी हो तुम अरी न रह सके पास तुम्हारे. into the hands of women, for which they have to qualify themselves and equip themselves, decision-making jobs, then there will be no war on this earth. As Baha'u'llah has said, world peace will not be brought about by mankind, but by womankind.
In the afternoon, addressing the students from CMS in the main auditorium, Honorable Mr. Justice A.P. Mishra, former Judge, Supreme Court of India and Chairman Reception Committee of ICCJW, spoke on peace education and unity of religions.
A peace is disturbed by something happening to your mind. Something happens which disturbs you. Actually, if you look into why laws are framed for a particular purpose. That law, so that the authority who is making the law may control a digression by individual to overtake the right of others. When you are disturbing others which belong to his domain, either property or a service right, or right a family right, or social right, each right, when a violation takes place, then question arises, there should be somebody to stop it so that he is not disturbed. Law steps into it. Law controls it. No, he cannot do it. But in spite of this, if he does it, the authority comes into play to bring back peace to you by restricting that person and violating it. Why a person violates law? This is another aspect. It is always said human is divine in character. A human being is truly, we have lost the credibility of first being called divine. We are not even human today. The way violations is taking place worldwide, we have denigrated ourselves to the animal world. Normally, from animal world, we have come to the human, and from human we have to become divine. That is why we are finding multiple laws. Whichever country, whichever the situation, if multiple laws are framed, that means violation is in mass going on. It needs control. You must be knowing that old Indian Vedic scriptures are divided, or yugas. One first Satyuga is also called Krita Yuga. The next is Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and finally Kali Yuga, in which we are there. It is said that in Krita Yuga, which is Satyuga, there was no laws. Why? Law was not necessary. Every human being was acting within the divine power. Divinity speaks about giving something to the other, rendering service to the other, not taking others' right.
Honorable Mr. Justice Hilario David Jr., former Chief Justice, Supreme Court, Philippines, spoke on environment and sustainable development.
Mine, too, is the rare privilege to visit a beautiful country which produced one of the greatest minds of the universe, who is revered by the world for his ideals of truth and nonviolence, for which he coined the word Satyagraha, where Sat stands for truth and Agraha for firmness. I refer, of course, to Mohandas or Mahatma Gandhi. In the foreword of the book entitled Gandhi's Autobiography, it is written, open quote, by means of Satyagraha, Gandhi sought to bring about profound and individual change without the fanaticism, the hatred, and the slaughter that attends so many violent struggles. As Jawaharlal Nehru pointed out, Gandhi thereby brought about an entirely new dynamic into the political and social field, which in the end transformed not only the history of India, but also the lives of all who took part in his campaigns. Since Gandhi's death in 1948, his example, his writings, and the militant non-violence advocated have continued to, open quote, teach the world, close quote. Mahatma Gandhi is the genuine icon of passive resistance and civil disobedience to absurd reform. His immortality came even while he was yet alive.
An interactive plenary session was held in the main auditorium, which was presided over by Honorable Mr. Justice Abderrahim B. Hamid, President, Supreme Court of Chad.
Children are the vulnerable sections of society because of the precarious legal situation that characterizes them, their fragility and the hostile environment in which they operate. The minor is therefore essentially vulnerable. He absolutely needs a favorable environment for its development and growth.
Aussi, au climat de la vie harmonieux et sécurisé,
Also, a climate of harmonious and secure, is it necessary for him to grow up in good conditions and aspire to become radiant. The various groups with whom he is in contact, family, school, neighborhood, etc., have a duty to give proper guidance to guide his steps towards his happiness and support.
Honorable Mr. Justice Bashkim Deja, President, Constitutional Court of Albania, spoke on dynamics of law and fundamental human rights.
The Constitutional Court has stated that if the situation is such that a different legal regulation of a certain relation is directly influenced by a public interest with the entirety of its essential element, then the interest would have a natural priority over the principle of legal certainty. As the Court has stated, in order to rightly understand and apply this principle, on the one hand, it is requested that societal law offers security, currentness and continuity, so that the individuals act in a correct manner and in conformity with the law.
Honorable Mr. Justice Dr. Adel Omar Sharif, Deputy Chief Justice, Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt, presented statistical detail about the abject living conditions of children today and gross violation of children's rights.
Today, 1 in 12 children dies before the age of 5, mostly from preventable diseases such as malaria and diarrhea. According to UNICEF, 2.5 billion people lack access to improved sanitation. 1 billion children are deprived of one or more services essential to survival and development. As children of migrant workers and other socially disadvantaged groups, as victims of racism and racial discrimination, trafficking, smuggling, physical and sexual exploitation and abduction, as well as the economic exploitation of children, even in its worst forms, are daily realities for children in all regions of the world, while domestic violence and sexual violence against women and children remain serious problems. Ladies and gentlemen, challenges that the children are faced with are many, and all of them need a line of action. But today, here I would like to draw your attention to the threat that will continue to cause irreparable damage if not controlled effectively and timely, and that is the threat to the environment, conservation and protection. To protect the Mother Earth from the disaster caused by action of ambitious men, we need to make immediate and thoughtful steps to safeguard our natural environment, with its diversity of life, its beauty, and its resources, all of which enhance the quality of life for present and future generations.
Honorable Mr. Justice Joseph Vovo, President, Court of Appeal, Gambia, detailing various judicial structure existing today, said
that the judiciary can play a role in achieving world peace, where the rights of the children all over the world will be safeguarded. The vision of Dr. Gandhi and the call of the children of CMS Lucknow is spreading like wildfire because more people all over the world are beginning to attend the conference. But I believe the call should go beyond the awareness stage and come to the stage of reality. In my humble view, we as judges, mostly from the common law jurisdiction, have a limit which we can go. I say so because as judges, we are custodian of the law. Our duty is to interpret the law and not to make the law. Making the law is the duty of the legislators who are elected by the people to make the laws that will govern them.
Honorable Mr. Justice T.S. Zorik, Chief Justice, Supreme Court, Mongolia, reiterated the CMS belief of enforceable international law.
It's a great pleasure that this important event called by the City Montessori School, which has proved its importance in strengthening international law and empowering the International Code of Justice for regulation of the international behavior, creation of atmospheres of the unity in the world, peace and security for the future of children, has been conducting continually for the 12th year. It's wonderful that so far 405 honorable Chief Justices, judges and heads of states from 95 countries worldwide have participated during the past 11 conferences, which gave great opportunities to the all to focus on the impact of global circumstances upon the well-being of the children of the world and those yet to be born. It's true that today international terrorism, lawlessness, global environmental degradation and danger of the world war seriously threatens everyone without exception. In addition to it, the world is confronted with the many difficulties as a result of wars, food shortage, scarcity of water, climate change, drug trafficking, and etc., which has a deleterious effect.
Honorable Mr. Justice Frederick Egonda Nitende, Chief Justice, Supreme Court, Seychelles, spoke on safe environment is the call of time now.
The European Court of Human Rights has interpreted first-generation rights in a manner that draws into the rights to life, property, and to privacy a right to a secure and safe environment. In a sense, this issue has been approached disparately from region to region and from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. An overall international regime is still lacking, in spite of the Stockholm Declaration on Human Environment of 1972, and 20 years later, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development in 1992.
Honorable Mrs. Fawzia Hashim, Minister of Justice, Eritrea, spoke on supremacy of law.
The law reforming process has taught us the lesson that rule of law should be understood to mean a system of laws where the fate of humans and various interests must be predictable, decided upper hand of the law, and not left to the often varying discretion of other humans. To that end, laws, whether national or international, must be designed in easily understood ways to enable the rendering of uniform, predictable, and consistent judgment.
Jai Jagat, this has been Krishna with today's CMS News as printed in the newspapers of Lucknow. City Pioneer writes, Chief Justices and judges of 70 countries firmly resolved to create a new world order in order to safeguard the future generation, strongly advocating the need for a world parliament, world government and world judicial system. They felt the safe future for the world's 2 billion children was possible only through a world government which could solve world problems effectively. राष्ट्रीय स्वरूप कौमी खबरें, यूनाइटेड भारत स्वतंत्र चेतना, डेली न्यूज एक्टिविस्ट, राहत टाइम्स, स्वतंत्र भारत, स्पष्ट आवाज, आज, राष्ट्रीय सहारा, आई नेक्स्ट, नजर, जनसंदेश टाइम्स, दैनिक राष्ट्रीय प्रस्तावना, वॉइस ऑफ लखनऊ, अमर उजाला, पायनियर, दैनिक जागरण, हिंदुस्तान तथा जनकदम का लिखना है, सिटी मॉन्टेसोरी स्कूल कानपुर रोड ऑडिटोरियम में चल रहे विश्व के मुख्य न्यायाधीशों के 12वें अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सम्मेलन में प्रतिभाग कर रहे 70 देशों के मुख्य न्यायाधीशों व कानूनविदों ने एक विश्व सरकार की जमकर वकालत करते हुए कहा कि विश्व सरकार ही विश्वव्यापी समस्याओं का समाधान कर सकती है और भावी पीढ़ी के सुरक्षित व खुशहाल भविष्य की गारंटी ले सकती है। विद दिस वी कम टू द एंड ऑफ ऑल CMS न्यूज फॉर द डे। थैंक यू एंड जय जगत।